St. Mary's Hospital held secrets in its sterile corridors, stories of pain, hope, and forgotten dreams tucked behind numbered doors. In room 314, 67-year-old Margaret Chin fought her third battle with cancer, alone except for the nurses, who had become her only family. Her daughter lived across the country, unable to visit due to work demands and financial constraints. Down the hall in room 327, 9-year-old Alex Rivera counted ceiling tiles while chemotherapy dripped into his small veins. His parents took turns sleeping in the uncomfortable chair beside his bed, their savings depleted, their hope wearing thin. Alex had stopped asking when he could go home. Room 301 housed Vietnam veteran Frank Morrison, whose war wounds had finally caught up with him at age 74. His wife had passed 2 years ago, and his adult children rarely visited. Frank stared out the window, wondering if anyone would remember him when he was gone. The hospital staff did their best, but resources were stretched thin. Visiting hours were limited, insurance coverage was complicated, and many patients faced their darkest moments in solitude. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the head of oncology, often worked 16-hour days trying to provide not just medical care, but emotional support to patients who had no one else. What none of them knew was that a letter had reached the White House 3 days earlier, a simple note from a hospital custodian named Carlos, who had written, "Mr. President, I clean these hospital rooms every day. I see people suffering alone, and it breaks my heart. They don't need politics, they need hope." That letter was about to change everything for the patients of St. Mary's Hospital. It was 7 a.m. on a Tuesday when Dr. Martinez received the call that would transform an ordinary day into something extraordinary. "Dr. Martinez? This is Agent Johnson from the Secret Service. President Trump would like to make a private visit to your hospital this morning. No media, no announcements, just a personal visit to see patients." Dr. Martinez thought it was a prank until 3 black SUVs pulled up to the hospital's back entrance an hour later. She watched in disbelief as President Trump emerged, dressed simply in a navy suit, carrying a small bouquet of flowers and looking nothing like the commanding figure from television broadcasts. "Doctor," Trump said quietly as he approached, "I don't want any fanfare. I just want to visit your patients, the ones who might not have many visitors." His voice carried a gentleness that surprised her. This wasn't the political Trump from rallies or debates. This was someone who genuinely wanted to bring comfort to suffering people. They started with Margaret Chin in room 314. Trump knocked softly and entered to find her staring out the window. "Ma'am, I hope you don't mind a visitor," he said simply. Margaret's eyes widened in shock, but Trump quickly put her at ease. "I heard you were fighting a tough battle, and I wanted to tell you that you're not fighting alone." For 20 minutes, Trump sat beside Margaret's bed, listening to stories about her late husband, her garden back home, and her fears about the future. He held her hand as she cried, and when she apologized for bothering the president, he squeezed her fingers gently. "Margaret, you're not bothering anyone. You're reminding me why this job matters." Word spread quietly through the hospital corridors, not through official channels, but through the whispered amazement of nurses and staff who couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Young Alex Rivera was coloring when Trump quietly entered room 327. The 9-year-old looked up with curious eyes, not immediately recognizing the tall man with the kind smile. "Hi there, Alex. I heard you're pretty brave," Trump said, sitting in the small chair beside the bed. "Are you a doctor?" Alex asked innocently. Trump chuckled softly. "No, buddy, but I heard you like to build things." He pulled out his phone and showed Alex photos of buildings and construction projects, explaining how structures were built from the ground up. "You know what, Alex? Your body is rebuilding itself right now, just like construction. It takes time, but it's going to be strong." Alex's parents, who had been in the hallway getting coffee, returned to find the President of the United States helping their son with a puzzle. Trump stood to greet them, but not before promising Alex that he'd send him a real construction helmet when he got better. "Every brave builder needs the right equipment," he said with a wink. In room 301, Vietnam veteran Frank Morrison was dozing when Trump entered. Frank opened his eyes and immediately tried to salute from his hospital bed. "At ease, soldier," Trump said gently, returning the salute with military precision. "I'm here to thank you for your service, and to make sure you know your country hasn't forgotten." Frank's eyes filled with tears as Trump sat beside him and listened to stories from Vietnam. Stories Frank hadn't told in decades because no one seemed interested anymore. "You served with honor, Frank. That matters more than you know," Trump said, placing a hand on the old veteran's shoulder. For 3 hours, Trump moved quietly through the hospital corridors, visiting patients who had been forgotten by the world outside. No cameras captured these moments. No reporters documented the tears and smiles. No political gain was sought or achieved. Dr. Martinez had practiced medicine for 15 years, but she had never seen anything like what happened after Trump's visit. Margaret Chin, who had been withdrawn and depressed, began asking for art supplies and started painting again. She told nurses she wanted to paint something beautiful for that nice man who took time to listen. Alex Rivera's recovery accelerated dramatically. His parents swore it was because of the hope Trump had given him. But Dr. Martinez knew that hope itself could be powerful medicine. When a construction helmet arrived 3 days later with a note saying, "For the bravest builder I know, President Trump," Alex wore it during his treatments and started talking about becoming an architect. Frank Morrison began telling his Vietnam stories to younger patients, finding purpose in sharing his experiences and helping others find strength in their own battles. The lonely veteran, who had felt forgotten, discovered he had wisdom and comfort to offer others. But the transformation went beyond individual patients. The hospital staff noticed something different in the corridors, a sense of hope and dignity that hadn't existed before. Nurses found themselves spending extra time with patients, inspired by the example of someone taking time to truly listen and care. Carlos, the custodian whose letter had started it all, received a personal thank you note from the White House. "Carlos," it read, "thank you for reminding me that the most important visits are the ones nobody sees. Your compassion made this possible." 6 months later, St. Mary's Hospital had become known for something beyond medical excellence. It had become known as a place where every patient mattered, where dignity was preserved, and where hope lived in the corridors. Trump's silent visit had created a culture of caring that transformed not just individual lives, but the very soul of the institution. The story was never reported by major news outlets, but it spread through a different